The stars had always been silent. For billions of years, they burned in the cold darkness of space, watching countless civilizations rise and fall. But on this day, the silence broke. A massive shadow moved through the void, bigger than any moon, darker than any nightmare. The Velithari Empire had sent its greatest weapon to claim another world. Commander Thesic Voron stood at the observation window of his ship. His four segmented eyes studied the small blue planet in the distance. Behind him, the bridge crew worked in perfect silence. No one spoke unless spoken to. No one questioned orders. This was the way of the Velithari. "Status report," Thesic said. His voice was cold like metal scraping against ice. "We have arrived at the target system, Commander," his second officer replied. "The third planet shows signs of primitive civilization, radio signals, basic satellite technology, chemical propulsion rockets. They call themselves humans." Thesic made a sound that might have been laughter. "Another young species playing with fire. How many times have we done this, Krath?" "This will be conquest number 18, Commander." 18 worlds, 18 species, all of them now serve the Empire. Thesic turned to face his crew. His armored body reflected the dim light of the bridge. "Begin standard approach. We will give them one chance to surrender. When they refuse, we will teach them the price of defiance." The ship moved forward. It was called the Devourer of Worlds, and it had earned that name through blood and fire. 40 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could crack planets in half, it was the pride of the Velithari fleet. Nothing could stand against it. Nothing ever had. Far across the galaxy, in a place where light itself seemed to bend with age, an alarm began to scream. Ambassador Irelnith of the Sindari Collective was reviewing trade agreements when the sound cut through her concentration. She was a tall being, her skin covered in patterns that glowed with soft blue light. Those patterns now flickered with confusion, then fear, then something close to horror. She accessed her personal terminal and read the automated alert. A Velithari Titan-class vessel had been detected in a restricted sector. She checked the coordinates twice, then 3 times. Her glowing skin went completely dark. "No," she whispered, "not there, anywhere but there." She ran. For the first time in 200 years of diplomatic service, Irelnith ran through the halls of the Galactic Concord headquarters. Other ambassadors watched her pass with surprise. The Sindari were known for their calm nature. Seeing one run was like seeing a mountain decide to move. The council chambers were enormous. Hundreds of seats rose in circles around a central platform. Representatives from 47 species conducted the business of galactic civilization here. Trade disputes, border conflicts, resource sharing. The boring work of keeping peace between the stars. Irelnith burst through the main doors. Every eye, every sensor, every awareness turned toward her. "Emergency session," she gasped. "Full council now." High Arbiter Kalvith, the oldest member of the council, manifested at the center of the chamber. He was not made of flesh and blood. Long ago, his species had evolved beyond physical form. Now he existed as pure energy, ancient and wise and very, very tired. "Ambassador Irelnith," he said, his voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "What could possibly require such urgency?" "The Velithari have entered System Sol 3. They approach the planet designated Quarantine Zone Omega-7. Silence fell. It was not the ordinary silence of a quiet room. This was the silence of 47 species simultaneously forgetting how to breathe. "You are certain?" Kalvith asked. His energy form flickered with something that might have been fear. "Confirmed by 3 separate monitoring stations. A Titan-class warship, the Devourer of Worlds itself. They will reach the planet within 2 standard cycles." The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives shouted in 100 languages. Some demanded more information. Others began calculating escape routes to distant galaxies. A few simply sat in stunned silence, their minds struggling to process what they had heard. Silence! Calveth's command rippled through the chamber like a physical force. The noise stopped instantly. "I must access the forbidden archives," the High Arbiter said. "What I am about to show you has been sealed for 12,000 years. Only 6 beings in this chamber have clearance to view it. After today, you will all understand why it was hidden." A holographic display activated above the central platform. It showed a small blue planet, beautiful and fragile-looking, wrapped in white clouds and surrounded by a single silver moon. "The humans call their world Earth," Calveth began. "We have been watching them since before most of your civilizations learned to make fire, and we have been afraid of them for just as long." "Afraid?" Ambassador Grelvin of the Mortok Republic laughed. "The Mortok were warriors, proud and strong. Of primitives who cannot even leave their own gravity well, what threat could they possibly pose?" "The same question was asked by the Vorathi Dominion," Calveth replied. "They sent a scouting party to Earth 200 of your years ago, 12 ships, 400 soldiers, the best the Vorathi had to offer." "What happened to them?" Grelvin asked. "We do not know. They were never heard from again. No distress signals, no survivors, no wreckage. They simply vanished." The chamber fell silent again. "The humans did not have spaceflight then," Calveth continued. "They did not have energy weapons or shield technology or faster-than-light travel. They had guns that fired metal projectiles. They had bombs that used chemical explosions. They had aircraft made of aluminum and steel. And somehow, with these primitive tools, they destroyed a Vorathi scouting fleet." The display changed. It showed images of human history, wars fought with swords and spears, wars fought with guns and cannons, wars fought with tanks and aircraft, mushroom clouds rising over burning cities, the endless, terrible cycle of human conflict. "They have never known peace," Calveth said. "In their entire recorded history, there has not been a single day when humans were not killing each other somewhere on their planet. They invented nuclear weapons and immediately used them. They developed biological warfare, chemical warfare, psychological warfare. They have turned the act of destruction into an art form." "Then they are savages," Grelvin said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "No, Ambassador, they are survivors. Their planet is what we classify as a Category 4 death world. The gravity is crushing, the atmosphere is corrosive, the wildlife is predatory, natural disasters strike without warning. And despite all of this, humans did not merely survive. They conquered their world. They bent it to their will through sheer stubbornness and spite." "Spite?" another ambassador asked. "It does not translate well," Calveth admitted. "The closest meaning is the willingness to suffer any pain, pay any price, to ensure that your enemy suffers more. It is the most dangerous emotion in the universe, and humans have built their entire civilization around it." The display showed the Velithari warship approaching Earth. "The Velithari believe they are coming to claim an easy conquest. They have no idea what awaits them. And we—" Calveth paused, his ancient form flickering with exhaustion. "We must decide whether to warn them, or whether to let humanity teach them the lesson that the Vorathi learned 2 centuries ago." The council had 3 cycles to make their choice. 3 cycles to decide the fate of the galaxy. And somewhere in the cold darkness of space, the devourer of worlds moved ever closer to the small blue planet that held the universe's most dangerous species. The humans did not know they were coming, but they would learn soon enough. And when they did, nothing would ever be the same. The debate lasted for hours. Representatives argued in circles while the clock counted down. Some wanted to send a warning to the Velithari. Others believed intervention would only draw unwanted attention. A few quietly suggested that perhaps the problem would solve itself. Ambassador Grelvin of the Mortok Republic finally stood. His massive frame cast a shadow across the chamber floor. "We waste time with fear and stories. Show us proof. Show us why we should believe that a primitive species could threaten anyone. High Arbiter Calveth turned his attention to the forbidden archives. Ancient data streams flowed through the holographic display. Very well, Ambassador. Let me show you what the elder races observed. The first images appeared. They showed Earth as it was 10,000 years ago. Small groups of humans huddled in caves, fighting against predators with sticks and stones. They should have died. Every projection said they would die. The predators were faster, stronger, and deadlier in every way. Watch, Calveth said. The humans did not run. They did not hide. Instead, they studied their enemies. They learned the patterns of the predators. They built traps. They made weapons. And then they hunted the hunters. This is their first recorded strategy, the High Arbiter explained. They call it persistence hunting. Humans cannot run faster than their prey, but they can run longer. They would chase an animal for hours, sometimes days, never stopping, never resting, until the creature simply collapsed from exhaustion. Then they would kill it. Endurance hunting is common among many species, Ambassador Irelnath observed. Yes, but humans took it further. They did not stop at animals. When they encountered other groups of humans, they used the same strategy. They would pursue enemies across continents, across generations. They would teach their children to continue wars that their grandparents had started. They never forgot. They never forgave. They never stopped. The display shifted forward in time. Bronze weapons gave way to iron. Iron gave way to steel. Castles rose and fell. Empires expanded and crumbled. Through it all, the killing never stopped. In one conflict they call World War II, approximately 70 million humans died. 70 million. And when it ended, they immediately began preparing for the next war. They built weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. Then they built more. Then they pointed them at each other and waited. Madness, someone whispered. Perhaps, or perhaps it is something else entirely. Calveth highlighted a specific data point. During this same period, they achieved something remarkable. They reached their moon, not through careful, measured scientific progress. No, they did it because two rival nations were competing to prove which was superior. They turned exploration into a weapon. They reached for the stars out of spite. Ambassador Trethan of the Veloci Harmony raised a tentacle. Surely this proves they are self-destructive. Given enough time, they will eliminate themselves. Why should we interfere? Because time is the one thing we may not have. Calveth pulled up biological data. The elder races conducted extensive studies of human physiology. What they found was disturbing. The display showed a human body in detail. Bones, muscles, organs. The structure looked simple enough. Earth's gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. This is significantly higher than the galactic average. As a result, humans have developed bone density and muscle mass that we would classify as heavy world or combat modifications. They can lift objects many times their body weight. They can survive falls that would kill most species. Their skeletal structure can absorb impacts that would shatter standard infantry armor. Impressive, Grelthan admitted, but surely our weapons would still. Their atmosphere contains 21% oxygen. This is a corrosive gas that most species cannot tolerate. Humans breathe it constantly. Their blood has evolved to use it as fuel. This gives them extraordinary endurance and recovery speed. A human can suffer wounds that would be fatal to a Mortok warrior and continue fighting for hours. The chamber grew quieter. Their planet is bathed in radiation from their star. Rather than dying, they adapted. Their skin changes color to protect them. They developed immunity to levels of radiation that would sterilize most worlds. And perhaps most importantly, their neural structure is extraordinarily resilient. Psychological attacks that would break most species simply make humans angry. You paint them as monsters, Ambassador Irelnath said softly. I paint them as survivors. There is a difference. Calveth paused, letting his words settle. But we have not yet discussed the most dangerous aspect of human nature. New images appeared, scientists working in laboratories, engineers building machines, artists creating works of impossible beauty, teachers sharing knowledge with eager students. Humans learn faster than any species we have ever documented. They can master complex skills in months that would take other species decades. They share information freely among themselves. They build upon each other's discoveries. A human child today has access to more knowledge than the greatest scholars of their ancient past. This is a strength, not a threat, Trethin observed. It is both, because humans do not limit their learning to peaceful pursuits. The display showed weapons, guns becoming more deadly, bombs becoming more powerful, missiles becoming more accurate. Every technology they develop, they immediately consider how it might be used for war. Every discovery becomes a weapon. Every tool becomes a killing instrument. They cannot help themselves. It is woven into their very nature. The High Arbiter turned to face the full council. 200 years ago, humans had barely achieved powered flight. Today, they have satellites orbiting their planet, rovers exploring neighboring worlds, and telescopes searching the stars. In another century, they will have faster-than-light travel. In 2 centuries, they will have weapons that match our own. And in 3 centuries... He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The Velathari Empire believes it is about to add another servant species to its collection. They expect surrender within days. They expect gratitude within years. They have never encountered a species that would rather die than kneel. They have never met humans. Ambassador Grelvin stood again. His warrior's pride had been shaken but not broken. Then we must warn them. Whatever the humans might be, the Velathari are our allies. We cannot let them walk into this blind. Can we not? Kalvith asked. Consider the alternative. If the Velathari succeed, they will bring human slaves back to their empire. Humans who will learn Velathari technology. Humans who will study Velathari weaknesses. Humans who will wait for their moment and then strike. The Velathari Empire will fall from within, and the humans who emerge from its ashes will have interstellar capabilities and a very specific grudge against the galaxy that allowed their enslavement. And if the Velathari fail, then humanity will take their ships. They will learn faster-than-light travel in months instead of centuries. They will burst onto the galactic stage with stolen technology, burning anger, and the knowledge that the universe contains other species who might try to conquer them. Kalvith's energy form flickered sadly. There is no outcome where humanity does not eventually reach the stars. The only question is how angry they will be when they arrive. The vote was called. Warning the Velathari would mean revealing council knowledge of the Sol system. It would mean admitting they had been watching. It would mean becoming involved. The motion failed. 31 species voted against. 16 voted in favor. The council would remain silent. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Ambassador Irelnith approached the High Arbiter. You voted against warning them. Why? Kalvith was silent for a long moment. Because I have lived for 300,000 years, Ambassador. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species evolve and die. And in all that time, I have never seen anything like humanity. They are chaos given form. They are change that cannot be stopped. You think they will win. I think that whatever happens next, the galaxy we know is ending. A new age is beginning, and humanity will be at the center of it, whether we like it or not. The ancient being began to fade. I only hope that when they judge us, they remember that we chose not to stand in their way. Irelnith watched him disappear. Then she turned and walked slowly back to her quarters. There was nothing more to be done. The Velathari would reach Earth in less than a cycle, and the humans would wake to find monsters descending from their sky. She wondered what kind of monsters they would create in response. The sky above New York City turned dark at noon. People stopped in the streets and stared upward. The shadows spread across Manhattan, then across the entire eastern seaboard, then across half the continent. Something enormous was blocking out the sun. Commander Thesic watched the chaos below with satisfaction. The humans were running, screaming, pointing at the sky. Some fell to their knees. Others crashed their primitive vehicles. A few simply stood frozen, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. "Begin broadcast," he ordered. His voice echoed from every radio, every television, every phone on the planet. Translation algorithms converted his words into every human language simultaneously. "People of Earth, I am Commander Thesic Voron of the Velithari Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You will surrender your governments, your militaries, and your resources. In exchange, you will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire. You have 1 hour to comply. Resistance will result in the destruction of your largest cities. Choose wisely." He cut the transmission and leaned back in his command chair. "Now we wait. They always take a few minutes to accept the inevitable." His second officer, Krath, studied the data streams from the planet below. "Commander, I am detecting unusual activity." "Fear, panic, the standard responses." "No, Commander, military activity. Their armed forces are mobilizing, all of them, simultaneously." Thesic made a dismissive gesture. "Let them play with their toys. It will make the conquest more entertaining." The first missile struck his ship exactly 47 minutes later. It was primitive, a chemical rocket carrying a nuclear warhead. The Devourer's shields absorbed the explosion without difficulty, but then came another, and another, and another. Within minutes, hundreds of missiles were streaking up from every continent on the planet. "They are attacking us," Krath said, his voice filled with disbelief. "They have seen our ship, they know they cannot win, and they are attacking us anyway." "Fools," Thesic felt his first flicker of annoyance. "Destroy their launch sites, teach them the cost of defiance." Energy beams lanced down from orbit. Military bases vanished in columns of fire. But for every base destroyed, 2 more opened fire. The humans had hidden weapons everywhere, underground, underwater, in mountains and deserts and frozen wastelands. They had been preparing for war their entire existence. "Commander," another officer spoke up, "we are receiving transmissions from the planet's surface." "Let me hear them." The bridge filled with human voices. Some spoke in calm, measured tones, requesting dialogue. Others shouted threats and curses. One transmission from a region called Texas consisted entirely of a human laughing and suggesting that Thesic perform anatomically impossible acts upon himself. "They are not afraid," Krath observed quietly. "They will learn to be." Thesic stood. "Deploy ground forces, full planetary subjugation protocol. I want their leaders in chains within 72 hours. The dropships launched. 10,000 Velithari soldiers descended toward Earth's major cities. They were the finest warriors in the Empire. They had conquered 17 species. They expected this to be easy. The first wave landed in Beijing. Captain Vriketh led his squad through the empty streets. The humans had fled. Buildings stood silent and dark. Victory would be simple. Then the ground exploded beneath his feet. The humans had buried explosives throughout the city. They had rigged their own streets, their own buildings, their own homes to detonate. As Vriketh's soldiers scattered, gunfire erupted from every direction. The humans had not fled. They had been waiting. "Contact," Vriketh screamed into his communicator. "Heavy resistance, they are everywhere." The humans fought like nothing the Velithari had ever encountered. They did not form neat lines. They did not follow predictable patterns. They attacked from rooftops, from sewers, from inside buildings that were supposed to be empty. They used weapons that should have been useless against Velithari armor, and somehow they found the weak points anyway. One human soldier took 11 shots from a plasma rifle and kept fighting. He killed 3 Velithari before finally falling. His last act was to trigger a grenade strapped to his chest. "They are insane," Vriketh whispered as he watched the explosion take 2 more of his soldiers. They are completely insane. Similar reports flooded in from every landing zone. In Moscow, humans had collapsed entire buildings onto Velithari positions. In London, they had flooded the underground tunnels to drown the invaders. In Tokyo, they had used their own vehicles as weapons, driving them into Velithari formations and detonating the fuel tanks. Commander Thesic listened to the reports with growing disbelief. His casualty numbers climbed. 10 soldiers lost, then 50, then 200. In 3 hours, he had suffered more losses than in his previous 5 conquests combined. "Commander," Krath said carefully, "perhaps we should reassess our strategy. They are primitives. They have no shields, no energy weapons, no spacecraft. How are they doing this?" "They are not fighting to win, Commander. They are fighting to hurt us. Every soldier they lose, they ensure costs us something in return. They are trading their lives for ours." "That is not strategy, that is suicide." "Perhaps, but it is working." The turning point came 3 days into the invasion. Thesic had pulled his ground forces back to secure positions, intending to starve the humans into submission. Then the reports started coming in. Human engineers had captured a crashed dropship. Within hours, they had stripped it apart. Within days, they had begun building copies. The copies were crude, barely functional, held together with primitive welding and something the translators identified as duct tape. But they flew, and they carried weapons. "How?" Thesic demanded. "How can they possibly understand our technology so quickly?" No one had an answer. The humans began mounting counterattacks. They struck at night, using their strange ability to see in darkness. They targeted supply lines, communication towers, landing zones. They never engaged in open battle. They hit and ran, wearing down the Velithari forces one small wound at a time. Then came the broadcast. A human general appeared on every Velithari communication channel. He was old, gray-haired, with a face carved from stone and eyes that held no fear. He spoke calmly, almost casually. "Commander Thesic, I am General Marcus Webb of the United Nations Defense Force. You have made 2 mistakes. The first was coming here. The second was coming in ships we can study." He held up a small device. It looked cobbled together from scrap metal and stolen components. "This is a prototype faster-than-light communication beacon. We built it in 72 hours using parts from your crashed dropships. Right now, every scientist on this planet is learning how your technology works. By next week, we will have our own plasma weapons. By next month, we will have shields. And Commander." The general smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "We are very, very angry." Thesic cut the transmission. For the first time in his career, he felt something cold settling in his stomach. It took him a moment to recognize the sensation. It was fear. "Commander," Krath spoke softly, "the elder races have protocols for situations like this. When a conquest becomes too costly, withdrawal is not considered shameful. The Velithari do not withdraw. The Velithari have also never faced an enemy like this." Krath hesitated. "Permission to speak freely." "Granted. We came here expecting prey. We found predators. Every moment we remain, they grow stronger. They learn our tactics. They adapt our weapons. They are not fighting to survive, Commander. They are fighting to win. And I believe," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "I believe they might actually succeed." Thesic stared at the blue planet below. Somewhere down there, humans were building weapons to kill his soldiers. Somewhere down there, scientists were unlocking the secrets of Velithari technology. Somewhere down there, an entire species was united in a single purpose, making the invaders pay for every inch of ground in blood. "Contact the Empire," he said finally. "Request reinforcements. If these humans want a war, we will give them one they will never forget." But even as he spoke the words, A small voice in the back of his mind whispered that perhaps he was the one who would never forget. Perhaps he had already lost, and simply did not know it yet. The humans, it seemed, had a talent for making their enemies understand that lesson far too late. 3 months had passed since the sky turned dark over Earth. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Factories that once built cars now produced weapons. Universities that taught philosophy now taught tactics. Children who played video games now identified enemy aircraft for targeting systems. Humanity had become a single organism with a single purpose: survival. Commander Thesic stood before his remaining officers. The mood in the room was grim. 40% of his ground forces were dead or missing. 2 destroyers had been lost to enemy action, and somehow, impossibly, the humans were getting stronger. "Show me the latest intelligence," he ordered. The holographic display activated. It showed satellite images of human cities. Craters from Velithari bombardment dotted the landscape, but between the craters, construction continued. New buildings rose from the ashes. New factories pumped smoke into the sky. New weapons rolled off assembly lines. "They are not rebuilding their civilization," Krath observed. "They are building something else entirely." "What do you mean?" "Before our arrival, human nations competed with each other. They hoarded resources and technology. They fought over borders and ideologies." Krath highlighted several locations on the map. "That has stopped. Every nation on the planet is now sharing everything. Scientists in Japan send their findings to laboratories in Germany. Factories in China produce components that are assembled in America. They have eliminated all barriers to cooperation." "How long did this take?" 72 hours after our first broadcast." Thesic felt that cold sensation again, fear. He was beginning to know it well. "There is more, Commander. Our intelligence officers have intercepted communications between human military units. They speak of something called Operation Prometheus. We do not know the details, but we believe it involves their captured Velithari technology." "Find out what they are planning." "We have tried. Our infiltration teams do not return. The humans have developed methods of detecting our cloaking technology. They seem to be able to sense when our soldiers are nearby." Krath hesitated. "There are reports that some humans can smell our presence. Their olfactory systems are more sensitive than we anticipated." "They are hunting us." "Yes, Commander, like animals, like predators." The ground war had become a nightmare. Velithari soldiers who had conquered 17 worlds now flinched at every shadow. The humans attacked without warning and vanished without trace. They left traps everywhere, explosives hidden in rubble, poison in water supplies, snipers who would wait for days without moving, barely breathing, until they had a clear shot. And then there were the prisoners. Velithari soldiers who surrendered expected execution. That was the Velithari way. Instead, the humans gave them food and water. They treated their wounds. They asked questions calmly, almost politely. And when the prisoners refused to answer, the humans simply smiled and said they had time. Some of those prisoners had begun talking. A few had begun cooperating. And worst of all, a handful had begun to question whether the Empire was worth fighting for. "Commander," an officer interrupted, "we are detecting an unknown launch from the human surface." "Another missile barrage." "Negative, this is different. A single vehicle, very fast, very crude it appears to be." The officer stopped, checked his readings, checked them again. "It appears to be heading directly toward us." Thesic looked at the trajectory data. The vehicle was accelerating constantly, pushing beyond anything human technology should be capable of. It was aimed at the center of his fleet. "Destroy it." Weapon systems locked on. Energy beams lanced through space. But the human vehicle was small and moving erratically. It dodged, it weaved, it kept coming. "Commander, it is using Velithari engine components. They have modified our own technology." That is impossible. They have only had access to our equipment for 3 months. Nonetheless, that is what the sensors indicate. And Commander, the officer's voice dropped, there is a biological signature aboard, a human pilot. Thesic understood then. This was not an attack. This was a message. The vehicle struck the Devourer of Worlds at 7% of light speed. It punched through 3 layers of armor before detonating. The explosion tore through the primary engine array. Secondary systems overloaded. Fires erupted across 17 decks. The most powerful warship in the Velithari fleet shuddered and went dark. In the silence that followed, one final transmission reached the bridge. It had been recorded by the human pilot moments before impact. Her voice was calm and clear. Humanity sends its regards. Thesic stared at the damage reports. His flagship was crippled. Thousands of his crew were dead. And the humans had accomplished this with a ship they had built in secret, using stolen parts, piloted by a single volunteer who knew she would not survive. They are willing to die, he said quietly. They are willing to die just to hurt us. Yes, Commander. How do you fight an enemy who does not fear death? No one answered. The repairs would take months, months they did not have. The humans were not waiting. They were building more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. Every day the balance shifted further in their favor. Then came the message from the Empire. Thesic read it 3 times before he believed it. The Galactic Council had made contact. They had shared information, and the Empire was ordering an immediate withdrawal. We are to leave, he told his officers. The Council has classified Earth as a restricted zone. No further contact is permitted. Commander, we cannot simply abandon the conquest. Our honor. Our honor means nothing if we are all dead. Thesic's voice was hollow. The Council has been watching this species for 12,000 years. They knew what we would find here. They chose not to warn us. Why? Because they were afraid of what might happen if the Velithari succeeded, and afraid of what would happen if we failed. He looked at the blue planet one last time. The humans will not forget this. They will not forgive. Someday they will come for us, for the Empire, for the Council, for everyone who knew about them and did nothing. Then what do? We run, we hide, we pray that they take a very long time to reach us. Thesic gave the order. All ships prepare for immediate departure. Leave the ground forces. Leave the equipment. Leave everything. We are finished here. The Velithari fleet limped away from Earth. Behind them the humans watched. They did not celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate. Their world was scarred. Their cities were ruins. Millions of their people were dead. But they were alive. They were free. And now they knew something that changed everything. They were not alone in the universe. And the universe was full of enemies who thought humanity was weak. General Marcus Webb stood in the command center, watching the alien ships disappear into the darkness of space. Behind him, scientists were already analyzing captured technology. Engineers were designing new spacecraft. Soldiers were training for battles that would take place among the stars. Sir, his aide said, what do we do now? Webb turned away from the screen. His eyes were hard, but there was something else there too. Something that might have been hope. Now we get ready. They came to conquer us. They taught us instead. They showed us that the galaxy is dangerous, that there are empires out there who would enslave us without a second thought. He paused. But they also showed us that we can win. We beat them with sticks and stones compared to their weapons. Imagine what we will do when we have ships of our own. Outside, the sun was rising over a wounded world. But it was still rising, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the Velithari were carrying a warning to the rest of the galaxy. The humans were coming, and they had learned to be angry. 6 months after the last Velithari ship fled from Earth, a new vessel emerged from the darkness of space. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human engineers had taken stolen technology and transformed it into something entirely new. The ship was fast, heavily armed, and built with a single purpose in mind. It was called the Constellation, and it carried humanity's first diplomatic mission to the stars. The Galactic Council had been expecting this moment. They had watched the humans rebuild with terrifying speed. They had monitored the construction of shipyards, the training of crews, the development of weapons that improved upon Velathari designs. They knew humanity would come knocking eventually. They had simply hoped it would take longer. Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped off the transport and onto the deck of the council station. She was a small woman with gray-streaked hair and calm eyes. Behind her walked 4 members of her security detail. They were not there for protection. They were there to make a point. The council representatives gathered in the great chamber. 47 species watched as the human delegation took its place at the center of the room. Some looked at the humans with curiosity, others with fear, a few with something approaching respect. High Arbiter Calveth manifested before the assembly. His energy form flickered with age and weariness. He had seen many things in his long existence, but nothing quite like this. "Ambassador Chen," he said, "humanity is welcome to address the council." Sarah Chen looked around the room. She took her time, meeting the eyes of every representative. When she spoke, her voice was soft but carried to every corner of the chamber. "We know what you did." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "We found the forbidden archives. We know you have been watching us for 12,000 years. We know you debated whether to destroy us. We know you classified our world as a quarantine zone. And we know you chose not to warn the Velathari when they came to conquer us." Ambassador Grelvin of the Mortok Republic rose from his seat. The council had no obligation to. "Sit down." The words were not shouted. They were not angry, but something in Chen's voice made the massive warrior freeze. He sat down slowly, his face pale. "We do not blame you for your fear," Chen continued. "We have seen our own history. We know what we look like from the outside. A species that cannot stop fighting. A species that turns everything into weapons. A species that would rather burn than bend." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "But we are more than that. We are also a species that protects its own, a species that stands up for the weak, a species that refuses to abandon those who need help." She looked directly at Calveth. "You watched us for 12,000 years. Did you never notice that? Did you never see the humans who ran into burning buildings to save strangers, the soldiers who threw themselves on grenades to protect their friends? The ordinary people who risked everything to shelter refugees, feed the hungry, heal the sick?" "We saw it," Calveth admitted. "We simply did not understand it." "No, you didn't. You saw our capacity for violence and assumed it was all we were. You never asked what we were violent about. You never noticed that we fight hardest when we are protecting something we love." Ambassador Irelnath stepped forward. Her bioluminescent skin flickered with complex emotions. "What do you want from us, Ambassador Chen? Punishment? Revenge?" Chen smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and slightly sad. "We want neighbors. We want allies. We want friends. The galaxy is vast and dangerous, and we have learned that the hard way. We do not want to be alone anymore." The chamber stirred with confusion. This was not what they had expected. Where was the anger? Where were the threats? "The Velathari came to enslave us," Chen said. "They failed, but they taught us something valuable. They showed us that there are empires out there that prey on the weak, species that conquer and destroy simply because they can." She straightened her shoulders. "Humanity has spent 10,000 years with no one to protect but ourselves. We fought each other because we had no external enemies. We competed and struggled and clawed our way to dominance on our little blue world. But now we know there is more out there. Now we know there are others who need protection." "You wish to become protectors," Trethan of the Veloci Harmony asked incredulously. "After everything we have witnessed." "Who better?" Chen replied. "We have been fighting since before we could walk upright. We have mastered every form of warfare. We have developed weapons that would make the Velathari weep. And most importantly, we do not know how to give up. When we commit to something, we see it through to the end." She activated a holographic display. It showed Earth, still scarred from the invasion but rebuilding. Construction crews worked around the clock. Shipyards produced new vessels. Academies trained the next generation of explorers and soldiers. "We are building a fleet, not for conquest, for protection. Any species that joins in alliance with humanity will have our full support. Any threat that comes for them will have to go through us first." "And what do you ask in return?" Colvith inquired. "Technology sharing, trade agreements, diplomatic recognition." Chen paused, "and one more thing, Commander Thesic Voron." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The Velathari commander had vanished after the retreat. Most assumed he had been executed for his failure. "We know he survived," Chen said. "We know he has been hiding in Velathari space. We want him. For trial, for execution. For a job." Chen's smile widened. "He knows more about galactic military tactics than anyone on Earth. We want him to teach at our new academy. We want him to help us understand how the rest of the galaxy fights. And we want him to see what humans can do when they are not being attacked." "He tried to enslave your species." "Yes, and he failed. Now he can either spend the rest of his life running from his own government, or he can help us build something better. We believe in second chances, Arbiter, even for our enemies." The vote was held 3 days later. 43 species voted to accept humanity into the Galactic Council. 4 abstained. None voted against. It was the most decisive approval in Council history. 7 months after that, the Velathari Empire formally surrendered, not to the Council but to Earth directly. Their fleet was broken. Their economy was collapsing, and human ships now patrolled the borders of their space. Commander Thesic Voron arrived on Earth as the surrender was being signed. He wore no armor. He carried no weapons. He walked alone through crowds of humans who should have hated him and found only curious stares. General Webb met him at the academy gates. The two warriors studied each other in silence for a long moment. "You destroyed my career," Thesic said finally. "You humiliated my empire. You turned everything I believed upside down. And now you are here to teach our children how to fight." "Yes." Thesic looked at the young cadets training in the courtyard. They were fierce and dedicated, just like the soldiers who had fought against him. "I believed I was coming to conquer primitives. I discovered something far more dangerous instead." "What was that?" "Hope." The alien commander turned to face Webb fully. "Your species has something that the Velathari lost long ago. You believe that tomorrow can be better than today. You fight not just to survive, but to build. You destroy, yes, but you also create. You terrify me, General, and you inspire me at the same time." Webb nodded slowly. "Welcome to Earth, Commander. Try not to blow anything up." It might have been a joke. With humans, it was hard to tell. 3 years later, a small girl in the colony of New Singapore asked her father a question. They were standing on the observation deck, watching the first human battleship leave for deep space patrol. "Daddy, what is out there, past the stars?" Her father knelt beside her, pointing at the vast darkness beyond the viewport. "Friends we have not met yet, enemies we have not beaten yet, wonders we have not discovered yet, and a whole lot of space that does not know what is coming." "What is coming?" He smiled and lifted her onto his shoulders so she could see better. "Us, sweetheart. Humanity is coming, and we are going to make the galaxy a very interesting place." The ship called Remember the Fallen disappeared into the light of faster-than-light travel. It carried weapons that made Titan-class warships look like toys. It carried soldiers who had learned that the universe was dangerous, and it carried the dreams of a species that had finally found something worth fighting for besides themselves. The galaxy had spent 12,000 years watching humanity and waiting for them to destroy themselves. Instead, they had reached the stars, and nothing would ever be the same. The Council had been right to fear them, but they had been wrong about why. Humanity was not dangerous because of their capacity for violence. They were dangerous because of their capacity for change. And they were just getting started.